Hey guys, Caleb here. Just a quick note at the top of this preview. We're back from our holiday vacation. Thanks for giving us a little bit of time off. We're right back in the swing of things. I think we're recording 4, maybe 5 episodes this week, so expect a bunch of stuff coming. In the meantime, this is a preview of a premium episode. You can find the remainder of it at our Patreon at patreon.com/killthecomputer. Hope you all had a wonderful holiday season, and we look forward to making a bunch of great stuff for you. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. Welcome back to Kill the Computer. My name is Caleb. As every week, I am joined by my co-host, June. How are you doing?
I'm doing better. I feel like 2025 was the year I turned into you a little bit. I got sick. I was thinking back. I got sick 6 times in 2025. The final time, the 6th time I got sick was the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
It was horrible. So I'm still recovering. I'm still probably gonna cough. I probably sound a little congested. I've been laying in bed, just rotting my brain away, just scrolling, viewing, reading a little bit, just here and there, but mostly not reading, mostly rotting my brain away. But I'm doing better now. I can be a little bit more of a human being. But I'm excited for our first episode of the new year. How are you doing, Caleb?
Good. Excited for the first episode of the new year, but also the first invasion of the new year happened last night when I was
started really quick.
Yeah, dude. I've been trying to regulate my sleeping pattern a little bit because it's been erratic since I moved or whatever, and so I took an edible and I was finally feeling good and calm. I was in bed and I was like, I'll check my phone one more time before I fall asleep. I'm sure nothing terrible could happen that would keep me up and make me feel like shit. And I look, and my friend Maddie, co-host for the other thing that we're working on, texts me. He's like, well, we're at war with Venezuela now. I was like, okay, well, I guess that's the rest of my night. I'm just going to be doom scrolling or whatever. It was just fucking awful.
There's nothing worse than taking an edible that makes you panic right as a potential war starts.
Yeah, dude.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
that
God.
sucked. It was indica, thank goodness. It was not sativa, or I would have had ego death or whatever. But we're joined today. You may have heard him on Trash Future or the 10,000 Posts. We were just recently, June and I, on that as a guest. Journalist Hussein, how are you doing, pal?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be the first one of 2026.
Oh yeah,
You are, yeah.
Yeah, it's a real big honor for me. So thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, for the subject of this episode, I'm very much it's something that we think about and talk about a lot on the show, but also I'm a relatively new parent, which means that it has affected me in a way that I wouldn't like, but it has been an interesting experience that I feel like I needed the right place to talk about. And yeah, this is a good place as any. So I'm very excited to talk about the subject, as well as all the happenings in your post-imperial nation. I don't know if it's post-imperial just yet, but
we're on our
rapidly
way.
approaching, if not.
Things aren't great. Things kind of suck. There was a cool thing that happened in New York, and then things sucked again. So yeah.
It's
Did
a
you
strong
see,
start of the new
by
year.
the way, the pictures of their situation room or whatever?
No, I don't think I did.
No.
For Trump, are you talking about Trump's war?
Yeah, it's so embarrassing.
Oh wait, no,
It's
I
just-
did. Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, because it got shared in our sort of 10K posts working group, and they have the big Twitter screen, which I think is I mean it's awful and horrible, but also it reminds me of when Twitter was a big thing in newsrooms, and I used to work in one of the sort of new media companies in the 2010s, and they had various big screens which just kind of had Twitter on all the time, and it reminded me
Oh my God.
of that period of time. So that's cool. That was a nice throwback.
Why is the Donald Trump administration just Twitter posters? They just want to be influencers on Twitter is really what all of this is.
Pretty much it is it. And I think a fan of our show, and maybe you're one as well, I think they said something just because it was I had said something about the end point of everything is posting is a global war. And I think, what did they say? They said something that it was much more succinct though, and I can't remember it now. But I think the point was just yeah, they are sort of posting their way into sort of, World War III. So that's also cool.
Yeah. And it's like, who fucking knows what's going on in Venezuela right now? At first, it seemed like it was a very explicit like declaration of war. Then it turned out to be they went in and just captured Maduro, and then they still bombed different locations. And now they don't even want to install the opposition leader to Maduro, which I thought would have been like what they were going to do. The person who got the Nobel Peace Prize, but they're just sort of like the two messages right now is the US is going to run Venezuela, but also the vice president of Maduro is going to be the leader. I don't even fucking see. I sort of.
Also, just a heads up, if you're listening to this in the future, what we're saying is probably going to be very different. This just happened just last night. So we're recording the morning of after.
Hopefully we'll know like more about how horrible the world is going to be like by next time we record, because I feel like this is such a horrible situation. This has horrible implications for Cuba. This has horrible implications for Colombia. Basically any of Mexico too. They want to like go after Mexico. Trump was like, watch out, Mexico, we're coming after you if you try anything funny. So this has horrible implications that it's just sort of illegal to invade and depose of any leader that you want. Horrible.
And it does, and it is like the sort of the thing about like post, like I think when it was first said, I was like, okay, fine, whatever. It's like a bit like just being a bit flippant about it. But like the fact that this has happened and it sort of does go then like no sort of like the international like rules based order or whatever it's called has really, I mean, I feel lots of people sort of say that like Gaza is the litmus test of like everything else. And I think that's like increasingly true in the sense of like what it has shown is like how much like you can get away with if you have enough guns and you have enough bombs and you're willing to use them. And the sort of also the kind of demonstration that, okay, well, the international rules based order will just not do anything. Which again, like arguably you can say that predates like the Trump period as well. That goes back to, I mean, in more like recent times, it did like the sort of the memory that I have is like the Obama red lines thing in Syria and just like the fact that didn't happen. And it's just like, okay, well then like all this infrastructure and like all this sort of like international bureaucracy or whatever that is supposed to kind of like define, a global civilization in which like the US kind of like takes a custodian role. Like that basically means, and what Trump has kind of shown is that, like it never really existed. And that's cool. We all knew that. But then, the sort of subsequent question is like, okay, well, what does exist? And it's like, well, like the place that has the most guns and bombs kind of gets to do what it wants. And so all those posts where like Trump has done loads of posts, like including to like European countries where he's just like, like if you're not careful, we're going to like do something to you. We're going to invade you.
And this is what he means. This is what he's meant the whole time. He straight up will just do it.
And it's just like, well, now they can do it. Like, if he wants to fucking invade Germany, he can do that, right? If he wants to like impose US troops like on a peacekeeping mission to the UK because he thinks like Muslims have taken over, like, have taken over the country, he can just go do that. And it's insane just to kind of think that like, oh, okay, like all of his information and all of his like people around his information, they all come from posts. They all come from these people who are like chronically online, and they're addicted to like a particular type of online arrangement, which projects like a very, projects like this view of the world in which like, I guess it goes back to that thing about like, what if the most online person that you knew had access to nuclear weapons? Do you think that's a good idea? Yes or no? I'll let you guys decide like what, let you guys decide the answer to that.
Yeah, we're that's sort of what the world is debating right now. Is posting good for war? And it seems
we're about to find out. So every time I kind of think about like the shows that I do and like my sort of interest in like internet culture and the whole like having spent a lot of my career being like, no, this is like a really important thing and we should pay attention to it. And like increasingly like it is sort of shaping the dynamics of our world. And you have people, I don't know whether you guys have experienced this, but definitely with me, like kind of traversing between professional worlds as well, where you're just sort of dismissed about it. It's like, oh yeah, like Twitter's not real life and stuff. And like now I see stuff like this, I'm just like, I'm vindicated, but I don't like it. It's not like it's not enjoyable for me. I don't, it's this kind of sucks as well. It sucks being right.
The war. Sorry, Caleb just sent the photo of the war room with the like big emoji in the background.
It's like what was it called? The one where like 5 years ago they post the fingers touching and it has like the kind of like watery eyed little cute whatever. So there's a picture. I think that's that Hegseth. I don't know what these fucking perverts look like. I think that's Pete Hegseth.
That's Hegseth. Yeah.
Yeah. And behind them is just the giant like cute emoji or whatever.
The big Twitter screen.
It makes me feel
the situation
schizophrenic. I don't know. It just feels very disorienting to see that.
People always really like to say that posting isn't real life, but I feel like, and we're, as much as Venezuela, I think we'll probably talk more about this and the implications of this, especially in future episodes. But I think the thing that I have realized, and a lot of people have realized, that I feel like some people do want to deny, is that like, for a long time, people always, like you said, Hussein, were like, oh, posting isn't real life. Internet's not real life. It's like, it sort of is. It's sort of become that. It's become more real than real life itself. And that's sort of what we're talking about today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, now, like, I'm sorry to like, because I think maybe this is a good, like, it also incorporates like the subject of today's episode.
Yeah.
But I think like the thing I've been thinking about a lot is this, like, well, posting isn't real life. Like, it's not incorrect in one way, but the point is that like, if you're and I experience this when I talk to people who are like massive, like chronically online in different forms, which is that if you can tell when someone is sort of like their thinking is driven by the stuff that they see on the computer, right?
Yeah.
Like you can tell like the way that someone speaks, even the speed at which someone speaks, the kind of like, this sort of, there's like a real erraticness to some of it. You can sort of tell that, okay, you spend an unhealthy amount of time on your screens. But the point being that like posting itself may not be real life, but like if you are interacting with someone who believes that like the world that they occupy can be best explained through the posts that they are algorithmically, for the most part, directed to, then to an extent, like you have to engage with it. And this is it. It's like now on the highest level, which is like, the sort of the government of the most powerful country in the world is being run by posters. And whether you like it or not, you have to engage with like the poster's logic, which like I think is also one reason why so many like establishment journalists, especially those I think who have made such a big deal of like being like, not being on Twitter very much because like they're sort of above it or whatever, like, the way in which they present it, like they have no idea what's going on. They have no idea who they're dealing with. And so like, the ways in which like they talk about like Hesketh and Trump and Miller and like all these like fucking people who are just kind of like addicted to their phones. They have no idea how to engage with it. And I think that actually is like really at the crux of a lot of it. It's just like, you need to understand that like you cannot really be above sort of posters logic. You do have to engage with it in some capacity, or you will have to engage with it in some capacity.
Yeah. I imagine like there's going to be a future where there is the first addicted to reels administration. And I can't wait for that.
That's great. That's cool.
They're gonna see a woman carrying a large boulder AI video and be like, I can't believe what just happened in Arizona. We have to do something about this. We're going there. We're going underground. We have to fix the bridge.
Maybe we should formally introduce the topic of this episode then.
Let's do it. Yeah.
The Brainrot economy. So I thought of the success that our friend Ed Zitron has had over the last year and even before, and his concept of the rot economy. In summary, businesses will grow at any cost, essentially at detriment to the product. And I wanted to take that and the same idea and talk about the Brainrot economy, which is that these same companies, in many instances, will take this growth at all costs mindset at the detriment to the human mind and all the terrible things that happen, and kind of what shapes that's taking, both from like a scientific standpoint and then just like a human cost as we go through some of this stuff. So at the top of the episode, you said you had kind of this affected you in a specific way as a parent, and I'm curious. Let's maybe all talk about a couple things, how you have experienced this, because I could just tell you my mental acuity, like in the times that I use like TikTok versus the times that I'm off of it, my mental acuity is in the dumpster, and now is unfortunately one of those moments.
So I'll begin like right from the top. So when a few months before my wife gave birth, I had sort of agreed to go off X via the Everything app, because partly because it like I was getting very distracted by it. It's just like, I'm a journalist by background, so like Twitter was like a really big part of like the work that I did and like how I accumulated sources. I think how I like interacted with like some of you guys from the outset as well. So like it was a way of organizing, and it blurred the boundaries a lot. But there was a point where it was like, okay, this is sort of distracting you from like, what is going to be like a very, very intense part of your life. And so I got off X, but I kept Instagram on my phone. And at the time, I only really used Instagram for like, posting stuff about, kind of pieces that I wrote, or like, it was I have a private account. I've always had a private Instagram account. So it was actually like this place where I was like, okay, that's where I can be away from like all the junk that I see on X.com, or be away from like all the politics stuff. But I sort of found that like, because obviously having a kid, like, suddenly your hours like become non-existent. It's like a really weird time. And my son, God bless him, like he has never really been a particularly good sleeper. And so I was up quite late, and like, at like sort of very weird hours. You're looking at like, you're between like 2 a.m. to like 4 or 5 a.m. And I sort of found like these were the hours where I wasn't really like awake to be able to do anything productive. I initially tried to sort of like be like, okay, if you're going to be awake, then I'm going to set a really good example for you from the get-go, and we're going to read books. And so I started reading Infinite Jest to him because I thought that would be quite funny. I mean, I was like, nope, this is like, I'm not committed enough to this bit. So we read a couple of like small books, but I didn't particularly enjoy it. And he also didn't give a shit. Like he was just crying and, all that stuff. He still does it. We're trying to read Dune right now, and he does not give a shit.
Oh, that's probably fucking sending him in a frenzy. Yeah.
I got, what? I bought like the really old and like the sort of collector's editions of Dune, but I found it on eBay. And I was like so excited. I'd be like, this is going to be like the first big series that we read together. Like, fuck Lord of the Rings, obviously fuck Harry Potter to hell. We're gonna go like hardcore for the first instance. He does not give a shit. Anyway, the point I'm trying to get to in the story is that like I have basically become addicted to Reels, and it's been this really, really bizarre thing because like I sort of like I don't really post on Instagram very much, but I am sort of consuming more. And partly it's because like the algorithm on the Instagram is actually like really, I don't want to say it's good in sort of a moral sense, but it's like very effective. It kind of knows the stuff that I like in a better way than other platforms. And so I think part of the reason why it kind of held me in was because it was just like, oh, okay, you like particular kinds of sort of like abstract art. So we're going to give you like Instagram accounts of like artists that you might like. And like, I've discovered some really, really cool like people on there. Kind of clips of video essays I found quite really interesting and quite useful. Explainers that I find quite useful. But I think like over time, what I've sort of found is that, oh, okay, my automatic go-to whenever like I have these moments with my son and I'm finding them quite difficult is that I'll just immediately reach out to my phone and I'll go on Instagram and I'll go through Reels, and like I'll sort of I spent a couple of weeks just like writing down how I felt like after sort of going through so many Reels and like looking at, I think this was about the time when I got this notification saying that my screen time was like on average like 7 hours, which was like the highest I'd ever gotten. Well, it was the highest I'd ever gotten. And I'm just like, holy shit. And it makes sense if you think about it, because it's like, okay, like a bulk of that time is happening between like the hours where he just doesn't sleep, but you can't really do anything else, right? And so I'm accumulating like hours both in the night and during the day, or like during the early morning. But it's just like, oh, okay, like during this idle time, or like what feels like this kind of idle liminal time, all I'm doing is going through Reels, and like I'm kind of smirking every so often when I find like a type of, the genre that I think I find quite amusing is like, white boy going through his Chinese moment, and he's like, they're like reviewing Chinese cigarettes, or the Indian sort of street cook who like uses Monster Energy to make like
you've
like
seen
egg
those
sandwiches.
too? I've seen those.
Yeah.
We're tuned into the same feeds.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is also it, because I look at this, it's like, oh my god, like, you know, this person has liked this post. How on earth did they find this, like, what feels like a very obscure, like, you know, post to me? There's like another guy that I'm really fascinated by, who I thought was like this niche character, until like I found that 4 of my friends like were liking his post. But it's like this Turkish guy who just like, he posts the same thing every single day, which is just like him. He gets like a bit of bread, a tomato, a Turkish pepper, and he puts salt on the tomato, and he just bites the tomato.
Yeah. I've seen that guy too, where he's like on the sidewalk. He's like in the street or something, right?
He does the same post every single day. And so it's like, in this weird way, it's like, as like someone who's really fascinated by kind of like internet culture and sort of the sort of bizarre things that you find, like, it really does appeal to me in this kind of like almost anthropological way. But it's like, I step back from it and I'm like, you know, you just spent an hour just watching slop, right?
Yeah.
It hasn't really sort of nourished you in any way. It hasn't really given you any creative ideas. It hasn't really sort of led you to kind of like thinking about, you know, I guess this was stuff as like, you know, when like early, not to romanticize the early internet too much, but it was just like, you know, I remember a period of time where like YouTube would be a really instrumental like source of like learning how to do something else.
Yeah.
Like, you know, people who learn how to,
I would say.
Yeah, people who learn how to play guitar, for example, or, you know, I learned how to like paint on like mostly watching YouTube videos when I was younger. But the whole point being that like, okay, this is the type of stuff that like leads you to be able to like want to do stuff outside of the internet, right? Or to like to be able to sort of do something with the things that you learn. And so what I found, or what I sort of like, what I kind of like realized is like, oh, I'm spending a lot of time watching this type of video content that is not really sort of nourishing me or making me think or like kind of any of that. And for some reason, it's like really soothing in one way, and it's really calming in one way. And that's a really strange phenomenon to have. And
it hits your brain in a really good way, is the thing. It hits your fucking brain.
Exactly. And I say this in the context of like, because, you know, being a parent of a young child is like, at least for me, I find lots of it quite stressful. And so in this really strange way, I was just like, oh, like, why is it that watching slop content is making me feel calmer? Why is it making me feel like more like, why is it making me feel more grounded? Is it doing that? Or am I just feeling something else? Am I just numbing myself? Is that the other thing too? Is like, and you know, it's kind of, is this the equivalent, or is this the mental equivalent of like the injections you get at the dentist before you get like a root canal or something? Yeah. So that's kind of like and like yesterday, for example, like this kind of happened. My son was like, he did not have a good night last night. And so I'm trying to soothe him.
He
and
saw
I'm just
the
like,
Venezuelan war invasion.
Well,
and he was like,
well, this is it. We watched the Venezuela invasion, but we watched it like as part of like this assemblage of like slot content on my Instagram reels, right? So it's like, you know, it starts off with just like this crazy equestrian, like, you know, he's doing like tricks on a horse. And then I scroll up and, you know, you find something else, and, you know, guy with the Chinese cigarettes. Okay, cool. Then it's just like, oh, Venezuela's being invaded, and like, you know, here's like the live feed of like the explosions that are currently taking place. But then you swipe, you know, a couple more swipes again, and you're back to the Turkish guy eating the sandwich, right? And so it's like, and so it's just like really, it's a really strange phenomenon, and like, but it's one that I feel is, you know, I'm really terrified by it in one sense, because it's just like, oh, okay, like I know what this is. I know that this is kind of sloppy nonsense, but like, it's taking up so much of my time, and for whatever reason, I am finding myself endeared to it, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally know what you mean. I mean, my experience with like the short form, like the reels, the TikTok, I've been like heavily resistant to engaging with a lot of this stuff, because I think there was a part of me that's like, oh, I'm like better than everyone else. I only use Twitter. I use Twitter. That's all I do.
We'll talk about why that's bad later. Don't worry. We've got a whole section on Twitter.
Awesome. Yeah, no, we'll talk about Twitter. But there was this resistance there for one reason, that I think I had a little bit of that mindset, but also just that I was like, I know if I get in, like if I download TikTok or whatever and I start scrolling, I'm going to find a feed that I fucking love, and I don't want to. I don't want to look away. And Caleb, you and I have been talking about like just touching on this subject a little bit, talking about this, going a little bit deeper in like the short form world in terms of like how it affects people's brains. And ever since then, I was like, you know what? I still up until this point, I had never really watched that much short form Reels content. I was still up till like the end of 2025, just like Blue Sky, Twitter, some YouTube here and there. That's like really all of my internet like intake was. And I was like, you know what, maybe I should like ingratiate myself a little bit into like TikTok and like Reels, like go on the ground, do some real journalism for a change and consume content. So I started doing that, and I very quickly, it sounds like this went down similar algorithmic like holes that like you saying that you've gone on, like the fucking monster egg street food in India. I've seen so much of that shit, like the rocket soda lady. I'm sure you've seen the rocket soda lady.
I've seen the rocket soda lady.
Of course you have.
I've seen none of these, by the way. This is strange. We're on different paths.
Yeah, no, we're on
volume off, but I'm going to open my TikTok and talk about what my first
no, we
results
just talked
are.
about it. It's going to appear. But no, like I have like found myself again every night now for like 30 minutes or so, 30 minutes, an hour. I will go on like TikTok or whatever, and I will go on my like my little comfort algorithm crawl where it's like I'll see some stuff like that, and then I'll find the guy that I think he's in the UK, and he goes, I was feeling a little peckish. I don't know if you've seen that guy.
No, I haven't.
He posts like different meals he makes, and he like fools the audience. Again, I think a similar thing I'm trying to get across here is that on these like people who are very well known, they get a lot of cachet on these on like short form apps, is they post the same video over and over and over and over. It's the same like bit, it's the same joke, it's the same thing over and over and over. And I also kind of enjoy it to an extent. I enjoy my like nightly crawl on like a horrible feed of just like the same thing over and over. It's become a routine of mine. As I've tried to like understand it. This was like me going into enemy territory, being like, I know this is evil. I need to understand. I need to like get myself in here and understand. And it's like it like sucks. It's bad, but I like kind of like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't think it's exactly the same, because I feel like I think reality TV is like, a different form, and I think different type of medium. But there are people who the people who like sort of believe that they're above kind of like reality TV and dating shows and stuff, but actually secretly like it. And it's well, also me as well, right? And like I like to think of myself as like a cinephile, but again, it's like having, I don't want to say it's just having a kid, but I think definitely having a kid kind of like accelerates it, where you kind of, and actually maybe this is a good point, where it's just like, because so much of your energy, because it does take up quite a lot of energy, you get to a point where like in your head you should know that I should like read a book, I should read a big book, or I should sort of like try and watch a film with subtitles, or at least a TV show that like is on HBO or something like that.
Sorry to interrupt you, Sam, but I was just curious, have you noticed with your uptick in like short form content, have you noticed for yourself that it's harder to stay focused on movies, films? Yeah,
well, actually, like I just before I came up, like we were watching something on our TV, and like my wife and we've really had to sort of be like, we need to put our phones away. And when our phones are away, like I notice my hand twitching. And that's like a really kind of worrying thing. It's just like, I'm just like impulsively like looking for this thing.
Roger Sterling, but instead of alcohol, it's your phone.
Even if then another thing I found on Instagram Reels from a very talented Chinese creator was a post that said like, phone is cigarette for eyes. And it was like, phone is cigarette for eyes.
That's real as fuck. Yeah.
that's so real. Like I have found it tricky. And I think it's one of those things where like, I even kind of say that like, it's so important that we actually do watch films, and it's so important that we do read books. Cause like, this is something where, it's something that, I mean, look, my attention span has never been great. I have ADHD. I was like a high performer, but like late diagnosis, ADHD, person. But
I didn't get my diagnosis till my 30s.
Yeah, well, you know, and suddenly a lot of stuff makes sense. But that being said, I don't think that like my sort of diminishing focus is entirely due to ADHD. I do think a lot of it is just like, okay, you have spent, like, I'm talking about myself here. I have spent the past like decade plus on varying forms of kind of like attention grabbing tech platforms, and over time that will have naturally like diminished my ability to like read a novel.
I mean, it
to,
definitely
like
we're going to read a meta-analysis of a couple different studies. But one of the things that that this does is it actually like, it's kind of like a use it or, well, to be clear, like the science on this is conflicting and young and still kind of a budding. But some of the things that they're saying is like your prefrontal cortex, which is like responsible for your executive function, your day-to-days, the stuff that makes you do things like pay your bills on time or clean your house or whatever. That stuff is that part of your brain is very hampered by extended use of this stuff, among other things. I'll read the study. Well, this is a meta-analysis, which is an analysis of multiple studies of I guess how short form videos, reels specifically with endless scrolling, how that impacts cognitive health. And this was in the Psychology Post just like 2 weeks ago. This is written by Eric Dolan on December 18th. And this is it jumps around a little bit, so I don't read the whole thing if you'd like. It's there. This is just a portion of it. But the title is Large Meta-Analysis Links TikTok and Instagram Reels to Poor Cognitive and Mental Health. Okay, guys, thanks again so much for listening to this preview. The rest of it can be found over at patreon.com/killercomputer. Again, hope you had a wonderful holiday season, and we look forward to getting back into the swing of things. See you next time.